I apologize in advance, but this video is going to have a lot of stock footage. Hello everyone, Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here to talk about Stokk the Broken. He is the Ogre Infusion that has just been completed. Hopefully you got him. He is an amazing champion. He is a beast. We are going to take him all over in dungeons. We are going to take him for wave clear. We're going to show you how you can use him to solo farm things. And we're going to show you some of the best builds that I've come with, as well as other builds that may be interesting if you choose to use them in something like Arena. So strap in that stock and let's go have some fun. But first of all, I want to thank you guys for being such good supporters. You guys are so amazing. If you get a chance to hit that like button or that subscribe button, if you like content like this, I much appreciate it. I do spend a lot of time making these videos. I do spend some of my in-game resources making these videos, and I appreciate that you guys appreciate the work that I do. So let me know, where are you going to be using this dude? What do you think of him so far? Or maybe if you're regretting skipping on the fusion, if you skipped on the fusion. So let me know down below, and let's get into the video. All right, so here we have Stokk the Broken. He is in all his glory, a really cool looking champ. He's got the stockade right here. He has broken out of it, hence the name Stokk the Broken. I believe that is actually in the lore. I have, to be fair, not read the lore. But he is a really cool looking champion. He's definitely a little gaunt for an Ogren, but they've been doing all kind of varied Ogren designs of late, so I think this is pretty cool. He has a wonderfully fun skill set that honestly reminds me of Eurogrim, which is this dude right here. He is a legendary version of Eurogrim, who is an absolutely amazing champion. And to be fair, if you have a Eurogrim, I would still build a Eurogrim, even if you have a stock, because I think the two of them will pair together, and that's one of the things I want to try in this video. So what does Stokk the Broken do? Well, first of all, he's got a 20% speed aura in all battles, and that's pretty good, especially for a non-speed champion. There's a couple of 24% in all area speed auras, not a lot of them. Usually it's 19, so 20 is just slightly better than 19, but that means that he can play anywhere and do a lot of stuff for you. Again, you're probably going to use him a lot in dungeons, but as a wave clear specialist, he could be used in Centranos, he could be used in Doom Tower. He is going to be very good for farming food for you in many areas, and that aura with extra speed makes him that much easier to build. So let's get into his skills here. First of all, we have his A1. This is not bad to fully book up, but I was trying to save books because I had exactly 14 books and I was really hoping to not use all of them. So you've got 2 hits. Each hit has a 25% chance increasing the duration of all poisons and HP burn debuffs on the target by 1 turn. To be fair, maybe I should actually fully book that. In fact, I probably will at some point, but I wanted to save a couple of books. That is fairly powerful, especially if you build him in a team where there's going to be a lot of additional poisons. It is every poison and every burn, and since it is on each hit, he has a chance of doing it twice, which can be very helpful, especially considering when he detonates them, they tend to go away. It is a single hit, which is a little unfortunate for wave clear, but it's still better than nothing. So his A2 here attacks all enemies 2 times. First hit instantly activates all poison and HP burn debuffs and all continuous heal buffs on all allies. So he does all the damage to the enemies, heals all the allies. These do knock the duration down by 1. It's just a single activation. And then the second hit has a 75% chance, bookable to 100, of destroying each target's max HP by 3% for each HP burn and poison debuff activated by them by this skill. That's huge for things like the Scarab boss, where I think he will be an absolute godsend. I'll see if I can do a Scarab run with him at some point in time. At the moment, I'm out of Doom Tower keys, but I will certainly try to add that into the video later. And then he fills the turn meter all allies by 20%. That's a huge boost as well, because that extra 20% allows him to go that much faster to cycle back around to his A1 and his A3. His A3 here attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance, bookable to 100, of placing 2 poisons. If the target's under HP burn, it places an additional poison and puts a 25% weaken debuff on them for 2 turns otherwise. So you either get weaken or a 3rd burn. So that's kind of cool. You also get 2 15% continuous heals on all allies for 2 turns that he later can activate. So he brings some of his own healing, although to be fair, it's in buffs, but it's still some of his own healing. and he does a bunch of poisons, and she's attacking with all of this as well. Sometimes it's nice to just place the poisons. Other times it's nice if he actually attacks with it. He's going to attack with it. He doesn't do a lot of direct damage, but you could certainly try building him for damage if you really wanted to. But I think you're better off building him super tanky like I have, which you'll see a little bit later. Finally, he's got the passive here. Damage inflicted by poison and HP burn will ignore block damage and unkillable buffs. This is useful in Arena, for example, because in Arena, you've got a Marishka who will put up block damage for poisons. This allows him to ignite poisons through block damage, which is one of the ways you can actually kill some of these teams. And it also doesn't have to be poisons or HP burns placed by him. It just have to be there. So anybody that activates those can possibly get through block damage and unkillable. This will also be helpful for ways where there's an unkillable enemy on the team, because he can eventually kill it through activation, even if he manages to turn lock it somehow other way. Whenever allies attack an enemy with destroyed max HP, increase the damage dealt by 10%. That includes him, so he's doing a little bit of extra damage for destroyed max HP. That's a pretty good overall. Only one of these champions' skills will actually process at any point in time, so you can't stack 5 Stokk the Brokens and get 50% damage increase. So having moved myself for blessings, we can talk about Lightning Cage is certainly an option because he's going to put all those continuous heals up, so he's going to have buffs on him. So if you want to avoid them getting stolen, Lightning Cage could be an interesting option. He has a good aura, so Intimidating Presence is not a bad option as well. Heaven Cast isn't the worst idea because he is going to do additional damage based on how many buffs he has on him, but he's not a direct damage dealer, so it's probably not the right way to go. Phantom Touch probably doesn't make a lot of sense for him. Cruelty could be interesting to ignite the defense a little bit because he does have 2 different AoEs, so he will chip away at defense. If you're building him with another team, that is certainly an option. If you're going to use him in Arena, Lethal Dose makes sense. That's the only reason Lethal Dose would make sense if you're using poisons in Arena. Temporal Chains, not bad for some Arena builds. Again, I don't think he's a major Arena champion. If you're going to use him in Arena, you're probably going Lethal Dose if you're specifically using him in Arena. You've got nothing really here in the War domain that really screams something that's worth using. Commanding Presence, you might as well get the Inspiring Presence. Life Harvest is probably not what you're looking for if you're using him in Arena. Chainbreaker doesn't make a lot of sense if you're not expecting him to get stunned a lot. For the Chaos, Brimstone could be interesting. Brimstone will certainly help you put those smites out there, but since a lot of his stuff is going to be AoE, you can't control where it goes, so that's not always the greatest in some situations. Plus, ideally, you're going to be blowing people up with poison, so they're not going to be taking turns in the first place or taking as few turns as possible. So Brimstone isn't perfect. Emergency Heal could be interesting, especially if you can put a Blood Shield ring on him, so when that shield expires, he heals himself just a little bit more. That's useful on like an Artax solo build for the Ice Golem. That may be useful on him as well. Nourish, I think, is actually something interesting for him. Increases the value of continuous heals, and since he's putting 2 of them up and he's instantly activating them regularly, this becomes additional healing. You're getting 5%, 10%, 15%, and it's restoring max HP, which means that if you decide to use him for Hydra, which I don't think he's a great Hydra champion because poisons are just kind of okay in Hydra, but he will ignite the burns in Hydra, so that could be kind of interesting. And this can give you some additional healing as well as ways to restore that max HP that's destroyed. So that could be very interesting as well. Those are kind of the blessings where I would go with. I really think Nourish is probably the one I would go with just because of the continuous heals. This gives him a much extra healing that'll be utilitarian for everybody, not just for him. As far as how I have him built, you're going to generally want to build him tanky because he is an HP-based champion, so he does damage based off of HP. You're going to want to build some fairly high defense onto him as well because you're generally using him as more of a support unit that does damage rather than a pure damage unit. So the extra defense is good, so putting him in an HP percent chest or glove and a defense percent chest or glove, probably a good idea. Or maybe even, like in this particular case here, I believe I have a defense ring on him just because I wanted a little extra defense. I found it was just a little lacking when I was building him after I got the original gear on. As you can see, I've got him incredibly, incredibly fast. You don't necessarily need him this fast, but if you're going to build him for a solo build, the faster the better. You're probably looking closer to the 230 to 240 speed if you can manage it. Obviously, 278 is amazing, and I think I could probably lift that up a little bit more, but to be fair, consider that a bit of a handicap because my gear is possibly better than your gear, so I've overbuilt him in several areas. We're just going to have to deal with that. Accuracy, 467 is more accuracy than he probably needs for almost any area of the game. But the good news is that means he can land his debuffs in any area of the game. So I could use him as he's built right now for Amius, which is not a bad use case for him because he would help with Amius with destroying max HP, destroying with the poisons, and activating all that stuff. It's very, very good for Amius. I think his kit actually plays fairly well for Amius if he's available for you. So with those stats in mind, I put him in Regeneration and Immortal. He doesn't necessarily need both Regeneration and Immortal, but they're very helpful. Bolster set would also be good for him instead of the Regeneration, although I probably would definitely want the Immortal at that point. Depending on what type of build you're going for, I could see him in a Guardian set as well, so he's taking a little bit of damage for a team. If you want the rest of the team to survive, it really kind of depends on how you want him built. If you want everyone surviving, then maybe you put him in Guardian, where he won't heal quite as much, but he'll take some of the other damage, and being a tanky champion, he won't take anywhere as much. Versus if you're going to build him to solo content, you want him as tanky as you possibly can be, which means you want that Regeneration and that Immortal. And finally, I've got 3 pieces of Pinpoint here just because that's extra speed and extra accuracy. Again, he's probably a little overbuilt. With that in mind, you can also certainly build him, especially if you're going to go for Arena. Stone Skin is probably the right way to go for him. You probably want 6-piece Stone Skin to get him in a 2-turn Stone Skin so that his first, getting the burns out there or getting the poisons... So his first turn, he gets the poisons out there. Or if somebody else is going to be putting burns out there and he's just going to be a burn igniter, that is still a viable strategy. But either way, you want him to live to be able to do that, possibly in a go second team. So Stone Skin is probably the way to go if you're going for an arena build of some kind. Let's go take him in some content, but first, let's show you his masteries. All right, his masteries are very much what I like to call the solo support masteries. There's a couple different options. I went and made some choices. You could certainly make different choices depending on what you're looking for. Specifically for the support, you're definitely going to go the support tree because the accuracy is definitely going to be helpful. This Arcane Celerity helps him get extra turns when buffs expire, and since he ignites them and doesn't refresh them, that is a very, very good thing to have because he can push his turn meter and get them back and get more of them on quickly. Is very helpful. It's nice to have a little bit of extra healing on him, so this extra XHP thing helped. The increased accuracy for enemy alive enemy is nice. If he has enough accuracy, you probably could have skipped this. And in fact, if I'd skipped it, I probably would have gone with Life Drinker instead. Now that I think about it, that might be better, but I'm not going to redo the masteries on him now. Lore of Steel helps for any additional stats you might get from sets. To be fair, if you're going to be doing something along the lines of Immortal gear and Regeneration gear, there's not a lot of extra stats, but the fact I've got him in extra Pinpoint gave me a few extra stats out of this Lore of Steel. So it didn't hurt too much to do it. Plus, I wanted to make sure I got Master Hexer, because if you can get some of these buffs and debuffs to land for an extra turn, Master Hexer can be very huge. So Master Hexer is definitely worth getting, which means Lore of Steel is probably worth getting, although you could certainly argue that Evil Eye might be the better option if you're not going to have sets that are going to give you a lot of extra stats. Cycle of Magic, always great. If he A3s, then A2s, then A3s again, you're not going to complain because he's got extra poisons out there. It doesn't happen always, but it's very nice when it happens. As a solo champion, Spirit Haste is great. That's 24 extra speed that you can stack up to be able to go faster and take extra turns. This is how you get to these insanely high speeds when you can't gear them up to the 280 to start with, like I've got mine geared. And then finally, Oppressor is one of the best skills for champions like this that are putting up a ton of debuffs and activating them, because he gets additional turn meter fill rate. What that means, as far as I can tell, is it means he effectively has 10% better speed as a result. So his turn meter fills up 10% faster. At least that's the maximum of it. So it's effectively like getting a bonus 10% extra speed. That's huge. We're talking 280 to 300 speed, so we're talking an extra 28 to 30-ish speed. That's huge. So Oppressor is great for these solo builds because the more turns you can take, the more regeneration you can do, and the more poisons you can get out and or activate before the enemy takes a turn. So on that note here, we got offense. We've gone crit rate because it makes as much sense as the attack. In fact, more so in this case because, oh darn, we crit occasionally. We get some extra damage out there. It may not be the best thing if you're going to be going arena, but if you're going arena, you're probably going to want to go the defense tree as well. Crit damage, because again, why not? Nothing else is really particularly exciting. Whirlwind of Death is great. This is a way to get up to 18 more speed, because if he's going to be soloing stuff, he's the one that's going to be killing everything else. So that increased speed is huge. Get you an extra 18 speed. That's a big deal. Damage increases by 5% for each dead ally. This is 10% extra damage. Same with this. This is up to 12% extra damage for killing things. Again, you want to do all the damage you can when you're doing these solo builds. So that's why these two make a lot of sense. If you're going to be going for a arena build, probably going to go in the defense tree, grab Defiance, grab Improved Parry here for the resistance to crit damage, get back up to get Delay Death, which is just really important, and finally Cycle of Revenge, which means that if people are getting crits, you've got a chance to get additional turn meter. This is pretty huge, so this is worth grabbing if you're going to be doing stuff in arena. But it doesn't make a lot of sense for most PvE content, because most champions only have a 15% chance to crit. All right, so we are here on Dragon Normal 25, and that's because Dragon 25 Normal is a great affinity for Stokk, and it's something that's generally attainable and reasonable to farm pretty regularly if you want to. You could certainly farm 24 or 20, other than the fact that I believe those are magic, which is going to be a bad affinity for Stokk. Now, we're going to solo with him. He's bringing 4 food, and they're basically going to die. The runs are going to take about 4 minutes, maybe a little bit less, depending on how much is going to go. I did book his A1, if I didn't mention that a second ago. His A1, I think I underestimated how important it is for him to extend them, because he does blow through them fairly quickly. However, as he goes, he's going to get more and more and more turns. So I'm going to let the run go in full, turn myself off, and let you watch the run. I'll probably speed it up to 2x so you can see, but he runs through this fairly quickly. He's fairly safe, and yeah, the other thing I think might be an issue with him is maybe you might want to build some resistance on him. To be fair, I probably could have done that. You need about 350 resistance for normal, and you need about 450 resistance for hard 10. So that's a lot of extra stats that would have gone away from some other survivability stats, but it would have prevented him from getting debuffed on occasion as well, which he will do, as you'll see in this run. So let's get this started, and let me turn off my camera. All right, as you can see, that took 3 minutes. It took 4 minutes the last time I ran it, although to be fair, I had unlimited frames off, and I did not have the A1 booked. I think the A1 booked actually does help save some time. Again, very quick for the most part for a solo run, very safe. He was never in danger. If you got a chance to see, he was actually taking 3 or 4 turns for the Dragon's 1 because of a combination of the Masteries and his extra speed. So that is what you're looking for some of these solo builds. And again, you're farming food and you're farming dragon at the same time. You could probably do something very similar in Ice Golem as well. I believe he's a very good affinity for that as well. So he's a great champion for this solo type run. Let's go for some fun teams, however, because I think there's a couple teams that could just be kind of fun and absolutely ridiculous. Probably not teams you would actually use, but what is Raid Shadow Legends if not a game that's about fun? This ridiculous team is brought to you because I can. We've got Stokk the Broken, we've got 2 TOs, we've got Eurogrim, and finally, we've got a Walking Tomb Drang. So you've got burns, poisons, poison explosion, continuous heals, all up there. Should be a lot of fun. And we're just going to not program this at all and let it run and see what happens on stage 10. Now, obviously, I don't think this is going to be a particularly fast team, but it will be definitely kind of interesting and fun to see. So let's sit through and watch this go. Look at all those poisons out there. 10 seconds for the first wave. Maybe I'm wrong with the speed stuff. Now we just got to get back around to all the poisons. There we go. One of my TOs is not booked, so that can probably slow this down just a little bit as well. Look at that. All right, so yeah, we're 40 seconds into the boss, and we're doing pretty well. Obviously, we're going to need some of these heals. Eurogrim does actually have a cleanse, so you can try to keep a couple of these folks alive, but they're all in regeneration gear and other gear as well to keep themselves alive, so this should be pretty fun and pretty quick. Up and stock goes down, but it doesn't matter at this point. It is curtains for the dragon. So there we go. Look at that. Stock bringing a bunch of the heals. That is a lot of damage spread over a lot of different champions. That is pretty fun. I don't think it's necessarily going to be meta in any particular case. However, it does mean you could do some fun teams because you saw how much max HP was down there. You could certainly bring a team like this into the Scarab boss, for example, and probably down the Scarab pretty quickly. So let's go take a look at a stock Scarab team and see what we can do. All right, so we've got stock here ready to fight the Scarab boss. I have a team here. I've got 3 champions that are just literally there for food. They have no gear on them. It can be any 3 champions without gear on them. If you need help getting through the waves, that is an opportunity as well. I've got a wave-based nuker here because while stock can certainly possibly get through the waves by himself, it's going to be significantly faster if I bring a wave-based nuker that can mostly clear the waves. He does need to do some damage. I did not need any presets for this. However, I did have to rebuild him slightly, so let's go in here and take a look at his stats. I did have to raise his resistance and accuracy. He needs about 350 to 360 to be able to resist things properly and as well as land all of his debuffs. Speed's about the same. I actually didn't lose a lot of defense or HP, but I did glyph some stuff up. Again, if you have a blessing, these stats are going to be a lot easier to get to. This defense is really kind of a minimum. I actually wouldn't mind getting this closer to about 3,000 defense. I think would be slightly better. Even sacrificing a little HP to do it, not the worst thing in the world. Part of the problem is I also had to put a Blood Shield ring on him, and the Blood Shield ring happened to roll into attack percentage, which is really not particularly useful on him at all. But this will be the stats we need to be able to get through. Again, we've got Ethos to clear the waves. I really do actually like Ethos for this because he also has a Destroy Max HP, so his A1 will actually occasionally help with destroying the shield for the Scarab boss. So we'll turn off Super Raids and get this started. The waves are generally pretty safe and pretty quick. Ethos mostly takes care of them, and stock takes care of the rest. The second level of this does slow down just a little bit because there are 3 duchesses on this floor, so that makes it a little more difficult, and that's actually why you need an Ethos of some kind of damage dealer, because stock is not quite enough damage to do this by himself, especially because when the duchesses get a turn, they will actually do that, which is going to give you the block debuffs. So we should get through this pretty quickly, though. It takes maybe a minute to get into the boss. So we'll fast forward to the boss, and we'll show you there. All right, miraculously, one of the food actually made it through. Not quite sure how that happened, but it did. And he's dead, so not a big deal. We got Ethos dead there, too. It gets kind of dicey right at that first hit, which is the only time it really ever gets dicey. From here, we basically start blowing up the boss. And look at all of that chunk of that max HP as we are taking down his shield. And that actually speeds up the run quite a bit because you're taking down the max HP with those poisons faster than you would be doing damage with the poisons. So we'll get that down. He can do it up to about 60%, I believe, is where he can get the max HP down. That'll also bring the shields down and will allow him to do a little bit more damage. And because he's got the resistance, he's not getting his buff stripped, which means the Scarab boss is not healing. And he is also not getting provoked, so he can do all 3 of his abilities. And that is why resistance is important on a stock. Now, you could certainly build a second high resistance champion and duo this, or find a resistance lead to possibly help you get the additional resistance or the additional accuracy if you can't hit the stats that I can hit. I did have to ascend the gear. Blessing would have been absolutely helpful, and I do have a max Great Hall, so that plays into some of the stats we're getting here as well. But here we are 2 minutes into the run, and, this seems pretty safe. We've almost got the shield. Well, the shield's all the way down. We've almost got his max HP down as far as we're going to get it with this. And from there, we start just chunking away at his health with all those poisons. And, it's nice to get the extensions for the poisons. It's nice to have the poisons set off in the first place. And overall, Stokk is doing a particularly good job. So if you're struggling with Scarab and need a chance to run through this is perfectly fine. If you're using Euros, one of the things you certainly could do is you could take a build like this in with Euros and run him beside Euros, and that will speed up the boss run significantly because he will be able to ignite the poisons that Euros is throwing up there, as well as extending them and putting more out there as well. So that's another interesting option for you as well. In fact, I've got a very similar concept where I run multiple TOs with my Euros to be able to make the run significantly faster, because the TOs get a bit of poisons on there, they ignite the poisons, and the poisons stay on there, and then he takes a bit more damage before eventually they may die and Euros finishes the job, and it speeds it up by several minutes. There we have it. Stokk the Broken. He is pretty broken. I think he's a great champion, could be a great addition to your account. He is not necessarily the best poison exploder. I think that still belongs to TO, but he is a very good poison exploder. He goes into a faction that could probably use another poison exploder. He's got a partner champion in the faction with Eurogrim. He has the faction Unity boss that could be very interesting to go along with him as well, that deals with exploding poisons and adding additional damage to those as well. So there's some interesting Ogryn teams that can be certainly made now due to Stokk the Broken. And if this is a champion that can help you run dragon and farm food at the same time, then this is a win for your account, because anytime you can use your energy better, saves you time, saves you energy, and saves you effort when you're doing for things like fusions. And overall, I think he just brings an awful lot of utility to be a good addition to almost any account, even the accounts with the TOs and the Eurogrims. I think he's great. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys got him. Where are you planning on using him? Let me know. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.